After a slow first couple of days for Darren Muji in free agency, the second Matt O'Leary and I get off the air yesterday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the New York Jets went out and they made a surplus of moves. Whether it's cutting C.J. Mosley, re-signing Isaiah Oliver, adding a ton of outside free agents, we have a lot to break down today. And who better to bring on to talk all things Jets free agency than someone who, the first time he joined us, it was an iconic show in NY Flight Jets Talk history. Well, that is Justin Freed of the Jet Press joining us right here, right now on NY Flight Jets Talk.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today?
ESPN writer, Mr. Rich Samini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer, and Jets legend, Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Law.
What is going on, everyone? Hello and welcome back here to NY Flight Jets Talk. We're here every night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, talking all things New York Jets. And we're back today on this Thursday, March 13th, 2025. Can't thank you enough for tuning in. Make sure you smash that like button and you are subscribed to the channel. It's completely free. Helps us grow significantly. That's the free way to help us grow here. The paid way helps us grow just as much as you can get into our membership raffle. Every membership gifted or $2.99 super chat will get you a ticket into our raffle. The prizes we're giving away this month include a Wayne Corbett signed jersey, a Darrelle Rivas signed photo, an Al Toon signed photo, a Keyshawn Johnson signed photo, Jericho Cotchery signed photo, free item from our merch store, and a channel emoji. So get in on that if you haven't already. But joining me right now is one of the best Jets podcasters slash writers slash editors slash everything on the internet. It's our guy, Justin Freed, gracing us with his presence here on NY Flight Jets Talk. Justin, how you doing, my man?
What's going on, buddy? I appreciate the warm welcome. I'm glad to be back. I know the first time I was on, it was a great show. We had a lot to talk about. And we'll follow it up again with plenty to talk about tonight.
1,000%. And we were talking off air. There was a lot of Fields Rogers talk, a lot of, going back and forth during that show. And Jets ultimately make their decision. They move on from Aaron Rodgers, like it or not. I know at the time, both of us were in the boat. We would have preferred to move on from Aaron Rodgers and go a different route than try to run it back with someone who's over 40 years old and not very mobile anymore at this stage in his career. But they signed Justin Fields, and the Jets have also made a lot of other moves. We've pretty much talked about the bigger ones that happened the first few days in free agency. Justin, I want to get your thoughts on some of the lower level moves the Jets have made. I'm going to start with one. It should be a top name in Jets history, no matter how he performs. The Jets signed tight end Stone Smart, who played for he was an undrafted free agent in 2022, signed out of Old Dominion. He spent the three past season with the Chargers, played in 38 games, catching 31 of his 45 targets for 380 yards, 1 touchdown. Now, Smart's really an interesting one because he's 6'4", 226 pounds, has more of that receiver build. He's not someone who is going to be an inline blocker for you. More like another cheaper option would be a Moali Cox, who would be more of that blocker for you. You can run 12 personnel with him. Stone Smart is more of this field stretcher type guy. You get him on the field. He's a bigger wide receiver. Why not take a flyer on someone who's 26 years old, see what he has, and maybe he's your wide receiver, your not wide receiver, but your pass catcher 3, your pass catcher 4 on this team and see what he could do for you.
Yeah, of all the low risk, high upside, or whatever you want to call them, the low risk additions that the Jets have made in free agency, this one's probably my favorite. I like Stone Smart a lot. Former college quarterback, he played at Old Dominion, was actually teammates with Zach Kuntz for a year. Fun fact.
Another bum.
Yeah, I know. When he was a wide receiver then, because Stone Smart played quarterback in college. They switched him to wide receiver his senior year. He didn't play tight end until he got to the NFL level. So yeah, he's only 26. He's a young 26. He's only been playing this position for 3 years. And if you ask any Chargers fan, I talked to a few after the signing, kind of trying to get a little insight into him. And the one phrase that kept getting pushed out to me was he maximized his snaps. Every time he was out there, he seemed to make a play. Like you said, Connor, not an amazing blocker. Like that is never going to be a strength of his game. He's a former quarterback, former wide receiver. He's only 226 pounds. He's never going to excel as an inline run blocker. But what he does do is he has the athleticism to stretch the field, which is not really something the Jets have had from their tight ends in a really long time. Like, I don't know if I can remember the last true field stretching tight end the Jets had. Maybe Dustin Keller.
Yeah.
It might be that far back. But I like Smart. I think he had 16 catches on only 19 targets last year, caught 75% of his contested catch opportunities. He is someone who's maximized his snaps whenever he's been out there. Chargers fans love him. I'm surprised that they non-tendered him because he was a UDFA, so it would have cost them almost nothing to bring him back.
$3 million, yeah.
Yeah, so they're clearly just going in a different direction. I like this move. It's the Jets are not shopping for the top guys in the market. Like I've seen people throw out the Cooper Cups and all. Like they're not gonna make those moves. But a Stone Smart, sure, this is a dart throw for lack of a better term, and maybe he turns into something. I don't expect him to be your tight end one to start the year, most likely, but maybe he can factor in, like you said, find his way into the pass catch rotation and carve out a role.
Justin, another signing the Jets made today is defensive tackle Brian Coart. He's going to be 29 years old before the season starts in May. He's played for 6 teams. He was a 5th-round pick in 2019, played for 6 NFL teams. In 2024, I was with the Bears, played 15 games for them. His best season his entire career high, which sounds crazy, 2.5 sacks, 12 total pressures, and 14 run stops. He's a guy who normally lines up kind of the interior lines up against the guard, but we've seen him at times, especially last season, as it line up as a nose tackle. So thoughts on this move? You bring in a guy like Byron Coart. What does this mean for the team? You view him as a roster bubble type guy. You think he goes into camp competing for a spot on this team?
Yeah, that's what I would expect. Most of the signings that the Jets have made outside of the guys that, the Stevens, the Ciscos, and the Fields, most of them are going to be guys who are competing for a roster spot. I think Byron Coart definitely fits that bill. Like you said, former day 3 pick, former 4th-round pick, I believe, of the Patriots. Had a decent stint with them. I know he ran into injury trouble. I believe he started 1 year and then he got hurt and then they cut him and he bounced around in 2023. I don't believe he played at all. I think he was on a team a couple teams in the offseason, then ended up getting cut. I think he spent the year in the Dolphins practice squad. Then he caught on with the Bears and actually played a decent role for them. Now, that Bears defensive line was really bad. It was one of the worst in the NFL, and Cowart wasn't necessarily even one of the best players on that defensive line, but he's a body. They need bodies in that defensive line right now because especially the interior is barren. They have virtually nobody, even under contract. They have Quinn Williams, they have Leonard Taylor. There is not a lot there.
That's it.
Now they have Byron Coart, who is a fine player. The connection is he played for Eric Washington, who was with the Bears last year. Eric Washington is now the Jets defensive line coach, so I imagine that played a role. That's probably why they're bringing him over. I wouldn't even call this a low risk, high upside move because he's 29 or whatever. He's going to be 29.
Mm-hmm.
Not much upside there. I think he is a person who exists, who will be playing in this defensive line and maybe making the team. I wouldn't have high expectations for him, but he's fine. He's rosterable, I think.
Well, Justin, the Jets did sign another interior defensive tackle alongside Coart right before we came on here, and his name is Lucky Fotu 2.0. He goes by the name of Jay Tufle, someone who, remember the whole thing, Justin, last year with Lucky Fotu was the run stuffer who can't run stuff. I think this is pretty much who Jay Tufle, if I hope I'm saying that last name right. I think that's who he is pretty much. 4th-round pick by the Jaguars in 2021, 25 years old, been in the league. He's been in the league for 4 seasons. First season he spent with the Jaguars, appeared in 4 games. Past 3 years he's been with the Bengals. So he's appeared in 34 games, 5 total starts. And then across his entire career, 1 pass deflection, 44 total sacks, 3 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, and a half a sack. That is the career line over 4 years for Jay Tufle. Justin, are you viewing this as another guy who you think could come in to camp and really have to compete for a roster spot?
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to be competing for a roster spot. He's another guy who just exists. I think there's a little bit more upside maybe with him than Cowart because he's a little bit younger. Yeah. I did read up some scouting reports on him before, right after they made that signing. High motor was something that was thrown out there a lot. So it seems like, he's kind of like a coach's favorite type of player where he's always, always active out there, even if he's not particularly playing well. I mean, I haven't watched Jay Tufele tape, but the PFF grades for what they're worth are not particularly good, especially run defense. Pass rush is actually graded out okay. But this is a guy who, even when he was with the Bengals the last few years, was not playing a ton, was basically the last guy in their rotation. There were games where he was a healthy scratch. Like he was not an important part of their rotation. And I don't imagine he'll be an important part of the Jets rotation. He's going to be another guy competing for a roster spot. Maybe he sticks. He is only 25 years old, so maybe there's some upside there. I think he plays more of like a 3 tech, but I think he can play over at 1 tech. He's big enough. He's 185 pounds, I think is what they listed him at. So maybe if they're going to go small there, they could play him at the 1 tech. But yeah, he's a warm body that they're bringing in. I think these additions tell me, unless they're going to make another big defensive tackle move, which I don't know, maybe they will. It tells me that the Jets really like this defensive tackle class in the draft, which they should. It's a really good class. There's a lot of really good names up and down the board. It's a very deep position group in this year's draft. So I imagine the Jets will not only add one piece there, they might even double dip. And maybe also the new staff likes Leonard Taylor. Maybe they watch some Leonard Taylor tape and they're like, this guy can play a role next year. They're just bringing in bodies at this stage. I don't think any of these players that we've talked about are super impactful additions, but they exist, and that's something, I guess.
Appreciate you all tuning in. Smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Justin Freed and Connor Long here with you. Thursday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. Any questions for Justin and I, throw them in the chat. Super chats come up immediately. If you want to call into the show, you could do so with the pinned comment at the top of the chat. Justin, I want to get some of your thoughts on, well, the Jets signed 3 offensive linemen yesterday. I'm going to start with Okafor. I think I'm not even going to try to pronounce his first name, but something Okafor was with the Patriots last year. I got some insight. Shout out to Mike Reese, ESPN Patriots reporter, who I have a solid relationship with. I'm going to let you know what I got from Mike Reese, who covers the Patriots for ESPN on what. Well, let me try to get the name right.
I got it if you need the
Chawukma.
I believe it's Chukwuma Okorafor.
Chukwuma Okorafor. That's what it is. Okay, so this is what I got from Patriots beat reporter Mike Reese on Chamukwa Okorafor. That's gonna be a name we're gonna have to work on here, Justin. The Patriots. Yeah. the Patriots were hoping Chuck would be their left tackle last season, despite the fact he had mostly played right tackle in Pittsburgh prior to that. They signed him to a fairly significant 1-year contract with that in mind. It didn't work out after Chuck was named a backup to start the season, had to come in and play snaps in week 1 before leaving the team after the week 1 game. So he pretty much quit on the team after he wasn't given a starting role, which is somewhat of a red flag for me. He's expected, as of now, he would be in place to be the Jets starting right tackle after they let Morgan Moses walk to the Patriots. I'm still looking at some of the tackle names on the market. Jedrick Wills is not someone I really like. Kendall Lamb is the name to watch for me. It was with the Dolphins this past season, 10-year NFL veteran. Run blocking, he hasn't been great over his career, but great in pass protection. Doesn't commit many penalties, doesn't allow too many pressures. Didn't allow a sack this past season. Kendall Lamb's primarily the name I'm looking for at the tackle spot. But thoughts on the Jets adding Chuck?
Well, first, I'm glad you mentioned Kendall Lamb because that's somebody that I've thrown out there as well. I have a few friends that are Dolphins fans, and as much as they didn't like a lot of their offensive line last year, every Dolphins fan I know was like, hey, Kendall Lamb's pretty good. Like anytime he was out there, because he didn't start the whole year, but I think Kendall Lamb will be a great addition as like
got a Dolphins fan in here.
There you go. See, and yeah. I'm sure Lansing would probably say the same thing. I mean, not that Kendall Lamb is Laramie Tunsil. He's not an all-pro left tackle or right tackle for that matter, but he's good. He's a solid player. As for Okorafor, look, he was fine with the Steelers. He was a below average starting caliber player, I would say fringe. But I think that I'm more so concerned about what's happened the last 2 years, because even dating back to 2023, he was the Steelers' starting right tackle going into the year. And he got benched for Broderick Jones, who's a name that Jets fans probably know very well. Of course, the whole McDonald thing. Broderick Jones is not very good. He has not been very good with the Steelers. Now, maybe Okorafor got benched because they wanted to get their rookie out there and they wanted to see what Broderick Jones can do. It's apparently not a lot. But it's concerning that he was benched and then goes into free agency, signs a 1-year, $4 million contract with the Patriots, and they're hoping that he can compete for that starting left tackle job, which, as you mentioned, he was a right tackle, I believe, almost entirely in Pittsburgh. I think he only played right tackle there.
Yeah.
Goes over to New England, does not win the left tackle job. Vadarian Lowe, who was a former 6th-round pick, ends up winning it, but Lowe, as you mentioned, got hurt. So Okorafor ends up starting. Week 1, he plays 12 snaps, 6 pass block snaps, gives up a pressure on half of those snaps, and he gets benched. He gets benched in the first half of his first game with the Patriots, and then just goes AWOL. I mean, I don't believe he's had any quotes about this. I don't know what happened. I'm not going to speculate, but it's definitely a red flag that this happened last year, and now that's 2 years in a row where he's gotten benched. So it's an uninspiring pickup, to say the least. If he's a camp flyer and you're just hoping he can beat out Max Mitchell or Carter Warren, fine. I have no issues with that. It's hard. the issues with a pickup like that. If they're actually expecting him to factor into the right tackle plans, which they might, I don't think the contract details have been released yet, but that might be a little bit more revealing. If he signed a similar contract to what he did with the Patriots last year, it's another $4 million deal, then I imagine he might factor into the right tackle plans. And if that's the case, I'm more concerned about the signing. We'll see what else they do in free agency. Maybe they add a Kendall Lamb. Maybe they, and I'm also not quite as high on Jedrick Wills. I get the upside with him. I liked him coming out of college.
Hasn't played a snap at right tackle in the NFL.
He's not played a snap at right tackle in the NFL, and he's also played like 11 games over the last 2 years. And when he's been out there, he's not particularly good. So that would be an upside swing on Wills, just hoping you can turn him into something. But yeah, we'll see if they make another move. If not, right tackle is definitely in play at number 7. I've been saying Armand Membu for a few weeks, and I'm glad that after the combine, people are on board because he killed it at the combine. I do think he's definitely an option at 7, especially if Okorafor is their right tackle going into the draft.
Look, Justin, I wanted Morgan Moses back for this season, but looking at what he got with the Patriots, I would not have paid him that. A 3-year deal for someone who's 34 years old. I mean, I love Morgan Moses. Great guy, great player overall. Average starting right tackle when he's able to stay healthy. That's the biggest thing. He's durable in the sense he battles through injuries, but he is always injured. So we're talking about paying a 34-year-old 3 years, $21 million worth up to $28.5 million with incentives. I'm not doing that. So I'm happy the Jets didn't fall for that and pay Morgan Moses that kind of money. I want to hit on what you just said about Armand Membu, tackle out of Missouri. After what he did at the combine, he's skyrocketed up boards into the top 10. I've been very big on a pick 7. I want a pass catcher. I want a weapon. I want a guy like Tyler Warren. I think he could be a great fit for this team. He's your field stretcher type guy who's 6'6", 261 pounds, yak machine. I'm also a big Ted McMillan fan. I like Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. What is your thought process, and why are you thinking offensive lineman at pick 7?
It's not that I'm necessarily thinking they have to go right tackle.
Yeah.
They have to go this. I think in a lot of situations, I'm just looking at what the board is going to look like and who are my favorite players at that spot. Because I think the Jets have a lot of holes and they have a lot of weaknesses that they need to fill. I mean, you can make a very strong case for Tyler Warren. You can make a strong case for Ted McMillan. You can make a strong case for Mason Graham, for Armand Membu, whoever's going to be there at 7. There is going to be multiple players available that the Jets could really use upgrades at that position. I just really like Membu as a prospect. It's really that for me. And I've been, for listeners of the Jet Press podcast, I have been saying it for a few weeks. I remember before the combine, the week before the combine, I said, and my co-host Mike Luciano gave me a little shit for this. I said, hey, Membu at 7 is not a crazy idea. And I even said, I'm like, he might be the first offensive lineman taken off the board. Like, this guy could go as high as 4.
He's the only true tackle, I think, in my eyes. I don't think Campbell's a tackle. I don't think Banks is a tackle. Josh Connerly's a tackle. Josh Simmons is a tackle. Gray Zabel's a tackle. All those guys. I don't see those guys going in the first round.
Simmons, the medicals are the issue with him. I don't know what the medicals look like, and I think that's going to scare off teams. But yeah, Campbell, he did not have a good combine. It's not necessarily his own. The measurements came out pretty poor, and I think a lot of teams view him as a guard at the next level. So if there's a team picking in the top 5 that needs an offensive lineman, the Patriots, although they've added Morgan Moses, they maybe don't need it as much anymore, but they still could. I would not be shocked if Membu is the first offensive lineman off the board, even if it's at 7. I don't know if there's, I don't know if Will Campbell was going to go before him in the top 7. I think Membu to the Jets could be the first offensive lineman. But yeah, it's not necessarily that I'm locked in on taking an offensive lineman there. I would not be upset at Tyler Warren. I'm not quite as high on Ted McMillan as others. I wouldn't hate it if he was the pick at 7. I don't think he's worthy of that high of a pick. I kind of have him and Emeka Egbuka similarly graded from what I've seen as them as prospects. I really like Egbuka. I think McMillan's good. Obviously, the Drake London comparisons have been thrown out a ton, but it's a fair comparison. I think you can make a case for a lot of guys at that number 7 overall pick, but I really like Armand Membu. He's one of my favorite players in this class.
Back to the free agent signings the Jets made at the offensive line position. Justin Myers is a name the Jets went out there. Justin Fields, starting center in college, been with the Packers past 3 seasons. He ranked 25th or worse in PFF's overall grade among centers. Played at least 500 snaps. 2024 season was really overall a down year for him. 26 years old. Starting all 56 of his games he's played over the past 4 years. A lot of people are now saying he could be the starting guard for this Jets team. I don't know if I'm completely on board with giving him a spot at this, make him the starting guard. You slide AVT out to tackle. I don't know if I'm on board with that. Got I think $4 million, $4.5 million, something along those lines. I don't know if I just want to hand him that starting job after what he's shown the past few seasons. I would be more interested. You keep AVT at guard. I really like Ozzie Trapillo from Boston College in this year's draft. Hollins Pierce is another one from Rutgers who had an insane combine. So I'm looking at the draft really to fill the tackle position, along with signing a Kendall Lamb in free agency. The Jets don't have a lot of depth on the interior, and I think Myers could be that guy.
Yeah, the money here, which is I think 1 year, $3.5 million.
Josh Myers, my bad. I said Justin.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, you're good. You're good. I believe it was 1 year, $3.5 million is what Josh Myers got. So that the money right there, that tells me that he's going to be a backup like that. If they signed him to a bigger deal, I'd be like, maybe he competes for some starting job. I do think right now he is one of the 5 best offensive linemen under contract. Not that that's saying too much because his competition would be Chukwuma Okorafor, Xavier Newman, Max Mitchell, Carter Warren. Like, there's not exactly a ton of other competition there. Yeah. So I assume they're gonna add someone. But what I think the Myers signing is more important for, one, it gives you extremely valuable interior depth. Which, look, Wes Schweitzer I think was a good backup interior lineman. Yeah. Could not stay healthy. That was the problem with him. He was just always injured. He was always injured in Washington. He was always injured in Atlanta. He was always injured with the Jets. And so I think this is your healthier replacement for Wes Schweitzer. He has played. Josh Myers has played all but one game over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
He's rookie.
56 games, 56 starts.
Yeah, he was hurt his rookie year, but other than that, like, again, he has started every game that he's played in the NFL level. He was given the starting center job in Green Bay as a rookie out of Ohio State as a second-round pick, and he's started every game since then. He is, I believe, I would call him a starting caliber center, not a good one. I would say probably comfortably in that 25th to 32nd tier, which is still technically starting caliber. In my mind, if you are in the top 32, you are a starting caliber player just by default. But I think also it gives them the versatility to potentially, if need be, make some switches along the offensive line. I don't think they're going to do that going into week 1. I believe Joe Tippmann will be the starting center and Elijah Vera Tucker will be the starting right guard. But you encounter a scenario where, hey, there's some injuries along the line, you need some shuffling. You can move Vera Tucker over to tackle. Again, I don't think they want to do that, but you can do that. And then you can always move Tippmann over to right guard, and maybe you insert Myers there at center. I do think I wouldn't hate Tippmann moving to guard. I have more reservation about Vera Tucker moving to tackle. I think he's a lot better as a guard. I could see a world where Tippmann is better as a guard than he is as a center. He's played right guard a little bit for the Jets, and he's done well. We know about the snapping issues with him in the past, and obviously that wouldn't be an issue at guard. And he's also 6'5", 6'6", which is, there's something to be said about that. It's a very difficult thing to be a 6'6" center. I mean, Mitch Morse had a good career doing it, but there's not a lot of those guys in the league because leverage is an issue, especially at the center position. So I could see a world where Tippmann is better at guard, but no, I don't expect Myers to be the week 1 starting center. I do think that is, of all the depth signings that they've made, probably the best one. He is a quality player that is, it's hard to find quality offensive line depth in the NFL. There's not a lot of it. The Jets have a good one now in Josh Myers, which that's a very good thing.
Now, Justin, you mentioned sliding Tippmann out to guard. You do that. Are you sliding AVT even further out to tackle? Is he going to be your starting right tackle? And then you're saying Myers would be your center?
I don't think you'd start with that, but I think you can do that. Like, you have the flexibility to do that. I would say probably more as like a midseason thing, or maybe they don't
injuries.
Or maybe they don't add whoever they want in the draft, and now they really they really have to reconsider things. Having that versatility and that flexibility is really, really important. Obviously, that's what makes Elijah Vera Tucker so valuable as a player.
Exactly. That's what. Yep.
4 of the 5 offensive line spots he can play, and I'm sure if you asked him to play center, he'd do a good job at that too. So that, having that versatility is important. And I think, it's not necessarily like, hey, Josh Myers is signed, he's now going to be our center, but it's like, we have this option if need be, if shit hits the fan and we need to make some changes, we have guys that can play multiple positions, which is always a good thing.
Let's move over to some of the in-house moves, Justin, the Jets have made. Linebacker CJ Mosley, 32 years old. He's been with this team, I think, 5 years, been with the team for 5 years. 32 years old, like I said, riddled with injuries last year, only played in 4 games for the Jets. Leader, the captain of this defense, really helped develop Jamian Sherwood and Quincy Williams at the linebacker position. The Jets release him with a post-June 1 designation. They spread out the dead money over the next 2 seasons. This is a move I was expecting the Jets to make, not particularly one I like, because I think CJ Mosley is going to play football next year, and while he's been injured, he's certainly a more than capable linebacker 3 in this league. So I don't get the Jamie and Sherwood release here, but it's a move I did expect the Jets to do.
Yeah, Mosley getting released was definitely the most obvious move that they were going to make going into the offseason, other than, once they decided to move on from Rodgers, it's like, okay, Adams has gone too. But, you could ask me back in November, October, I'd have been like, yeah, Mosley's gone at the end of the year. Fantastic player. I cannot say enough good things about CJ Mosley as a player, as a human, as a leader. He deserved a lot better.
You interviewed him, right, Justin?
I did get the chance to interview him. Yeah, good shout. Yeah, he's an awesome guy, a fantastic person, and he deserved a lot better than, unfortunately, what he was forced to deal with the Jets and the disaster that this team has been for a lot of his tenure. I'm just, I'm happy for him. Just before we even get to like should they release him or not? I'm happy for him that he was able to turn his career around, because his first couple of years with the Jets were rough. They could not have gone worse. Like, he obviously, people remember that debut game against the Bills back in 2019, right? And then injuries cost him basically his entire first year. Then it was the COVID year, so he didn't play at all in his first 2 years. And in his first year back, he was understandably rusty. And it was like, damn, the Jets paid this guy all this money. He was the highest paid linebacker in the NFL, I believe, when they signed him, and he's done nothing. And then turned his career around, got back to the CJ Mosley of old. I think that 2022, 2023 Mosley was some of the best football that he has ever played, even dating back to his time with the Ravens. So to see him be able to turn that around and become not only a leader of this team, but a damn good player, I'm very, very happy for him. And I hope that he is treated with the respect that he deserves on his way out. As for, if they should have released him, honestly, it just felt inevitable to me that I didn't even think about, like, what if they kept him? I imagine, well, one, I don't know if he's going to play football next year. I assume he will. We haven't heard about him retiring, but he did have that neck injury last year, and neck injuries can be very tricky. So who knows? Maybe he decides to call it quits. I also think it's a scenario where he probably wouldn't want to come back as linebacker 3 at this stage of his career. Like, he probably wants to sign on with a contender if he's playing next year, and maybe he can start. Like, if he is,
if he's healthy, he's a starter.
Yeah, if he is a healthy player, if he is healthy. I mean, the last time that we saw CJ Mosley fully healthy, he was a really good linebacker. He was, I believe, a Pro Bowler or a second-team All-Pro in those years. So I think that would be a scenario where he just doesn't want to play behind Sherwood and play behind Quincy, which, that's another. I don't know if I don't know if you've talked about that on the show, like the future of Quincy Williams, what happens there with Sherwood back. I think that's an interesting.
Even overall, the whole room, it's not even him not getting paid or demanding a trade. You look at the room, Justin, just 2 really, really light linebackers as your starter. Like, I really want to beef up this linebacker room one way or another, whether it's adding someone in the second wave of free agency, whether you look to the draft. Jeffrey Bassa from Oregon is a name I really like in the third round. I really think you need to add some weight and beef up this linebacker room, because Quincy Williams, Jamie and Sherwood, 2 very, very good players, but they're not obviously Quincy Williams is a heavy hitter, but they're not the big linebackers. I think you need at least one of those on your team. And I think CJ Mosley kind of profiled in as one of those guys. He wasn't huge, but he was bigger compared to a Jamie and Sherwood or Quincy Williams. And I thought that was a really, really solid linebacker trio.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, in a perfect world, they would have kept Mosley, and he stays on, and he is your third linebacker, and he's happy and everyone's good. I just don't know if he would have wanted to do that. And I think they probably just doing right by him by letting him go. Also, financially, it makes more sense to move on now, even if it really doesn't save them a ton. At least designate him as a post-June first cut. It saves them a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I could see the argument for bringing him back. They definitely need a third linebacker in there, because they don't really have any third linebacker at the moment. I don't know who would even fill that role, like
Chaz Surratt's a free. Jamin Davis, the guy they just re-signed. We'll get into it a little. He would be the linebacker 3 as of now. 26.
Yeah, they did just bring back Jamin Davis. They got Zaire Barnes is still kicking around in that room. Yeah. Marcelino McCrary-Ball is basically just a special teamer.
I forgot about him.
Yeah, I mean, last year basically their linebacker 3 was a combination of Chaz Surratt and Sam Aguavin, I believe, was playing some linebacker.
So Aguavin's a good special teamer. Surratt was fine. And McCrary-Ball is someone who's just going to beat you on kickoffs and punt returns.
Surratt, I would not be shocked if he went to San Francisco. Robert Saleh loves Chaz Surratt.
I'm surprised Ashton didn't go there with Boyer and Saleh there.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, he definitely could end up going there. But Saleh's gonna bring in some of those guys, like whoever. Sure. I'm surprised Solomon Thomas didn't go there. But Solomon Thomas went to Dallas. Aaron White got there, so there's some connection. But yeah, man, they'll do something at linebacker. I agree. It's a very thin and small room right now.
Isaiah Davis, Justin, someone who was really the nickname he got was a Swiss Army knife, and that's really what he was. He provided a ton of serviceable depth as a safety, also as a nickel corner. The Jets bring him back, agree on terms. They re-sign Oliver. Have the details of that contract come out yet? Or are those still?
Not that I've seen.
Yeah, I don't think those details have come out yet. But assume a relatively team-friendly type deal to bring Isaiah Oliver back on this team. Someone who was a depth piece. That's really what he was, and he was serviceable when you needed him to come in. So I like the fact that they're bringing back Isaiah Oliver. This team has a lot of holes, and I think the fact you get someone who provides depth at safety, still a position of need. Although they brought back Tony Adams and signed Andre Cisco, so he gives you depth there. And also at nickel corner, you lose Brendan Eccles, who was I know people were talking about him coming in cornerback too, but you look at his numbers from the Jets, he primarily succeeded as a nickel corner. Isaiah Oliver still provides depth there, so he fills some holes on this Jets team, which I really like.
Yeah, I really like that move. Isaiah Oliver was quietly one of the best free agent signings the Jets made last offseason. Yeah. Again, there was not a lot of competition there. We're talking about, the
Lucky
Laws of the world, the Lucky Fotus, but he was really good. He exceeded my expectations by far. Extremely versatile and valuable depth piece to that secondary. Ended up playing a lot of nickel corner last year. I know they brought him in. He was a corner in Atlanta and then San Francisco, where, by the way, he played under Steve Wilks. So imagine that played a role as well as keeping him. Wilks coached him in San Francisco. He was a starter. He was the 49ers starting nickel corner before the Jets signed him under Wilks. Then the Jets bring him in. They convert him to safety. He ends up playing, I think, just as much cornerback as safety because of the injury to Michael Carter, and Oliver's basically your starting nickel for a lot of the year. And I thought he played well. I thought he absolutely held his own, and that is somebody you want to keep around in this defense. Not somebody who's going to start, but somebody who is a third safety, fourth safety. He's your backup nickel. He can even play outside corner if you need him to. Like, he is an extremely valuable chess piece for Steve Wilks and Aaron Glenn, and definitely a guy who I'm happy that they brought back. Somebody who I was hoping they would bring back. I was hoping either him or Jalen Mills would be brought back, and maybe they still bring back Mills. I'm not sure, but they both kind of occupy that same role as just a versatile depth piece in the secondary who could play corner, who can play safety, and held their own last year.
Appreciate you all tuning in. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, follow Justin on social media, the Jet Press podcast. Go over there, give him a sub, read his work at thejetpress.com. Follow him on Twitter at Justin T. Freed. Did I get that right there, Justin?
Yes, you did. You got it. You nailed
it. There we go. Appreciate you all tuning in. Like I said, smash the like, subscribe. Any questions, throw them in the chat. Pin comment if you want to call into the show. I'll go over to M. Had first, who says Jaden Higgins at pick 42. Justin, I'm a big Jaden Higgins fan. I really, really like his size, 6'4", 215 pounds. I think if you don't go and get a Ted McMillan in the first round, he could be that big-bodied guy to play opposite Garrett Wilson. You could put him at all three wide receiver positions. Really like the way you can use him. I think a better question would be Jaden Higgins at 72 or 73. I don't think he's going to go in the second round in my eyes. I really, really like Higgins, but I feel comfortable trying to wait it out to 70, or maybe they do the thing the Jets did last year with Malachi Corley. You pass on him in the second round, and then you try to trade back up either the end of the second round or early third round if the Jets are really in love with Higgins. But 42 might be a little rich for me, but I'm a big Jaden Higgins fan.
Man, I'll take him at 42. I have no hesitation. I honestly, after that combine, because he killed it at the combine, 4.4. I actually have some notes on him because I literally just talked about him on the podcast like last week or the week before that. 4.47 40-yard dash, a 9.87 RAS score at 6'4", 215 pounds. I would take this guy in a heartbeat at 42. And I think I literally just tweeted out a couple hours ago that if Jaden Higgins is there at 42, I am running to the podium and I'm taking him. I honestly think that after that combine, his stock is skyrocketing. And I don't know if this is a hot take at this time. Wouldn't be shocked if he snuck into the end of round one. I don't think this is a particularly amazing draft class. And I can see a world, for wide receivers specifically, I can see a world where he ends up going ahead of a Matthew Golden or even ahead of a Luther Burden. I could see Luther Burden falling out of the
first round. Luther Burden, I think, is way, way overrated. A pure slot guy, drops the ball a lot.
Yeah,
not big on Burden.
You get, like, unfortunately, there's a lot of comparisons to like the Malachi Corleys and the Amari Rogers of the world, and I don't want to
Dontavian Wicks a little.
Yeah, and like I think Burden's a better prospect than those guys, but there's red flags there. But yeah, I would not be shocked at all if Higgins went higher. 3% drop rate in college, which is ridiculous. He has the production, over 1,000 yards this last year at Iowa State. He also had a 56% contested catch rate. I'm glad I got these numbers here.
Yeah.
I just talked
10 out of 60.
Yeah, he is a really, really good player. I don't think he's as amazing of an athlete as those numbers would indicate. Like I know 9.87 RAS score pops out. I don't think the tape shows somebody who's like, he's not a bad athlete by any means, but he's not an elite separator, which normally that's the one thing that I look for in a wide receiver. Like if you could separate in college, that I think is the most translatable skill to the NFL. If you can separate in college, you can separate in the NFL usually. He's not a bad separator, but that's not the strength of his game. But I think the upside there with him, it's different. Like Keon Coleman is a guy in last year's draft that I was not a fan of at all. I was not very high on Keon
You've been vocal about that on the pod.
I know. I think I say it too much. I've interviewed Keon Coleman now, by the way, so I hope he doesn't.
Yeah, I think you said that 2 weeks ago that you got to stop talking about him. Yeah.
I gotta stop trashing this dude. But like my take on him, my red flag with him was he's a contested catch receiver who is not particularly great in contested catch situations. That is not an issue with Jaden Higgins, who has a 3% drop rate and a 56% contested catch rate. So I think if you put him in that X role or even in a big slot role, I think he can have a lot of success at the NFL level. If he's there at 42, I am very happy taking him.
Jet up our guy Caden comes in, trade back in the first and draft Abuka.
Sure. I love that too. I also really like Abuka. He is probably my either favorite or second favorite wide receiver in this class. Fantastic route runner. You usually can't go wrong with an Ohio State wide receiver. I know they say, scout the jersey, not the helmet, but I do really like Emeka Abuka. Obviously, you're not going to take him at 7, but yeah, if they move back, and I don't know who's trying to trade up to 7.
Cowboys for Genti, maybe same.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know if anyone's going to trade up for Genti because it's a really good running back class too. I don't know. I know a lot of people, say,
why not at 7 though? That's my question to you. If you really like
Abuka, I mean, there's other guys I'd probably want at 7. That's why.
Would you take Membu or Abuka at 7?
I would take Membu for sure.
Wow.
I would take Membu. I would take Graham.
Warren?
If he's there, I would take Warren over Abuka as well. I mean, although I wouldn't hate a scenario where you trade down and maybe take a Colston Loveland because I also think he's really good. And I do think 7 is high for Warren. I don't think it's great value, but in this draft class, there's so few blue chip talents that there's going to be guys that go in the top 10 that are not normally top 10 picks. Like Mike Green could go in the top 10, which he's not. Don't
talk about Mike Green, Justin. Mike Green's a really, really electrifying.
He is.
He reminds me of Bryce Huff, when he had 10 sacks with the Jets.
Yeah, I can see it. He's got a great first step. I think Mike Green's a very talented pass rusher. In a normal year, he's not a top 10 pick. And
he's like a top 30 pick.
He'd be a first round pick. But I think that's somebody who could sneak into the top 10. And Abuka, I don't think he's at that level. I don't think he's probably going to go top 10. But yeah, in that 15 to 25 range, I think is probably his sweet spot. And if you trade back and he's sitting there, absolutely, I'd love Emeka Abuka.
Sharon comes in, says draft Watts too. I like Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, Justin. High football IQ, really, really solid run stuffer. Good in college. He's another one to watch with that 42nd pick. Him and Nick Amanwari from South Carolina. Those are the two guys who've been after Malachi Starks. Those guys are in conversation for safety number 2 and safety number 3. And this year's class, wouldn't mind either one of them at 42.
Yeah, I think Amanwari is going first round at this stage too. I don't know if he's gonna be there at 42. I mean, if he blew up the combine, I think legitimately was the best safety ever, the most athletic safety.
I want to put together a video though, because I don't know how much stock you put into the combine overall. The measurables are great and all, but I really don't put I want to look at all the drills. I'm sure ESPN has a chart or something, and I want to do a show just showing how the combine in my eyes doesn't mean anything. And I want to put together guys who ran Xavier Worthy has the 40 record, but the most consecutive bench press reps and see where they are now. How long they were in the league for. I don't put too much stock into the combine.
I agree. I think NFL teams put more stock into it than they probably should sometimes. I mean, you will see it with the Brandon Stevens signing, where teams will bet on traits, they will bet on athleticism. And
Shamar Stewart, cough.
Shamar Stewart, who might go. He's another guy who might go top 10, which definitely
4.5 sacks in college, top 10 pick.
He had pressure, a lot of pressures. He's one of those guys who ended up having a lot of pressures, not a lot of sacks, but. Yeah, the production is not what you'd want from a top 10 pick at all. But yeah, I think Amanwari can go first round just because his stock is going to skyrocket after that combine. Watts, if he's there at 42, I wouldn't hate it at all. I definitely like Xavier Watts. I think a lot of people thought he was going to be a first round pick going into the year, and it's not like he had a bad year at Notre Dame, but he's not. I think same with Malachi Starks. Both of them, I feel like it's almost just prospect fatigue at this point, where everyone knew these guys were great. They were so hyped up, and now we're getting the draft season and people are like, yeah, they're good. And people are forgetting how good they are as players. I like Xavier Watts a lot. Would not be upset with him as a second round or as a day 2 pick.
Appreciate you all tuning in. Smash the like, subscribe. Keep the questions coming. We'll get to those. Call into the show with the pinned comment at the top of the chat. Looking here, and it looks like the Jets still haven't made any moves since we've been on the air. The Jets have yet to make a move thus far since we've been on the air. Justin, I'm going to reference an article you wrote. Just I think yesterday it came out about a potential Chris Olave trade, because ever since the Jets brought in Justin Fields, the talks have been going around, trade for Chris Olave. For those who haven't seen your article, could you sum it up for us? Explain your stance on a potential Chris Olave trade here for the Jets.
Sure. Yeah, it's something that's been thrown out a lot. A lot of Jets fans are talking about it because the wide receiver market, both in free agency and not that the draft is a bad wide receiver class. I think it looks bad in comparison to previous years, which have been absurdly good. It's a fine class, but there's not a lot of avenues the Jets have to address wide receiver. I mean, even Tim Patrick sounds like it's probably not going to happen. So they are hurting for wide receiver depth. So, people are looking at trade opportunities, and Chris Olave's name has been thrown out. Obviously, there's the Ohio State connection with both Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson. It'd be really fun to reunite those three. I guess also Josh Myers, also Jeremy Ruckert. You could just be the Ohio State Jets, the New York Buckeyes, whatever.
Like the Green Bay Jets. Now the Ohio State Jets.
Yeah, now they'd be the Ohio State Jets. I mean, look. So Chris Olave is a really good player. I like Chris Olave a lot. I don't think he's quite as good as the numbers would indicate. He had a couple of 1,000-yard seasons to begin his career. He's a good player. I think he's a good wide receiver too. The issues are pretty obvious with him. It's concussions, first of all. That's the big one. Had 2 concussions last year, 2 concussions within a span of 4 weeks. The second one was gnarly. If you haven't seen the video, I would not recommend looking at it. It's gross. And he ended up missing the entire year after that. He also had a concussion in 2023, and he had a concussion in 2022. Dating back to college, he's had 5 concussions now in 4 years, I believe. That's a major concern. So, that's one thing that you have to keep in mind. And that's also why, people are like, why would the Saints consider trading him? That's partially why. The other part of it is you are probably going to have to pay him at some point soon. Right now, this offseason, the Saints have to make a decision on his 5th-year option. I believe that comes in at close to $16 million, which is not cheap at all for a guy who you're not confident in his health necessarily.
Also a new regime.
Also a new regime coming to New Orleans too. So that's
new head coach. Mickey Loomis is still there.
He's going to be there forever, it seems like. He's there forever. But yeah, new head coach coming to New Orleans. Maybe the new coaching staff has a different view on Olave. I would be hesitant to give up a lot for him. I didn't really necessarily take a strong stance in the article. It was more so like it's a good option to consider and to look at the price for it. But if you do trade for him, it's a risk because you are taking a risk on this person's health, on this player's health. And I hope he can stay healthy. I wish him all the success in the world, but it's a genuine concern you have to think about. And you're taking a risk because you're committing financially to this player, because you're probably not going to extend him this offseason, but you are going to pick up that 5th-year option. You're not going to trade for the guy unless you're doing that. So you're now committed to him $16 million in 2026. So I can see a world where the Jets trade for Olave. I don't know what it would cost. It's honestly really difficult to gauge what his value would be because I don't know how the Saints currently view him, and I don't know how the NFL views his health situation right now. If the NFL isn't as concerned as I am about it, maybe he would go for a 3rd-round pick or maybe even higher. I don't know, because he's still on that rookie deal. But if they are concerned about it, maybe it's a day 3 pick. I have no idea. But I think if the price is right, it's worth considering. And if they are confident enough in the medicals, it's worth considering. And if he is healthy and he is the player that he has been, then he's a great wide receiver too. And then you have a wide receiver duo of Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. I don't think that, I think you can still pay both of those guys because Olave is going to come in at a decent contract, but he's not going to be commanding what Garrett Wilson is. Probably, in the 20s, I would imagine, in the 20 million range, but he's not going to be Garrett Wilson is probably pushing $30 million a year. But yeah, I think you can have both of those guys in, and it would be a good solution to the wide receiver problem right now. But there's risk associated with it. It's not the home run that I think a lot of Jets fans think that trade would be.
Justin, really appreciate you hopping on. Everyone, I can't thank you guys enough for tuning in here on this Thursday. Back tomorrow, time depending. I have to cover the Mets game, live recap for Metsmerized. So depending on what time that game ends, either 9:30 or 10 p.m. show tomorrow. So a late show, but we'll be here. Don't worry. Like I said, appreciate you all sticking with us. Like, share, and subscribe.
Shout out Metsmerized. Sorry, not to cut you off. Shout out Metsmerized. One of my buddies in college used to write for them. So
oh, really? That's nice. Yeah, Metsmerized is great.
Yeah, they're cool. I talked to what's
Mike Mayer.
Mike, I know Mike Mayer, Joe, he's not with them anymore, but I remember
Okay.
Joe, who used to run the site.
I've only been there since August. So,
Okay. The Joe, I
yeah.
think, was the guy who used to run this. I think he was the founder of it.
Okay. Yeah, they've been around since 2005. They've been around.
Yeah, that's Rise School. They do really good work. So shout out Mets.
Sure. I appreciate Justin. Can't thank you enough for hopping on, everyone. Thank you guys for watching. Justin, you got any final thoughts you want to share here before we let you go on the show?
We didn't get to talk about him, but I'm excited for Justin Fields as the Jets quarterback. That is who I wanted. I remember talking about him on the show, a while back. We had some interesting discussions with a few people who called in, but I hope that I'll say this, and I said this on Twitter right before we hopped on. I don't know if Justin Fields is going to work out with the Jets, and the odds are he probably won't. The odds are the Jets are probably looking for a new quarterback in 2026 or 2027. But I'm very happy that he's my team's starting quarterback. I'm happy because he is an easy guy to root for, and I will have a lot of fun rooting for and watching Justin Fields this year. I don't think the Jets are going to be very good, but I think they're going to be a fun team, and I'm excited to see what they can do in 2026 or 2025 and I guess beyond. So Those are my final thoughts.
Justin, appreciate everyone. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, JTS, Jets, Jets, Jets.